You need to remember the impossible things that God has done. You will forget God's work in your life if you don't build memorials to him. Your heart will be faster to forget it than you can even imagine. Jot this big idea down. God's people must remember that their impossible rescue was entirely his work. It was entirely God's work. It wasn't our might, our strength, our good deeds, our achievements. No, rather, it was God's work that saved us and our impossible rescue. We were on the brink of death, needing him to rescue us, needing him to save us, needing someone to come and deliver us. And he did. He did it for the Israelites then. He's doing it for people now. And we have to be a people who remember. But if God has done the impossible in our life, how do we keep from forgetting it? I want to show you that in God's word today. We're in Joshua chapter 4. I'm going to read for you a few verses to start. Joshua chapter 4, verse 1. When you're there, say, I'm there. When all the nations had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, take 12 men from the people, from each tribe of man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here on out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. And when your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And when it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. I want to help you understand what these mean for your life. These aren't just God's words for the people of Israel. They're God's words for you. So what does it mean for your life? Let's do it like this. The rest of you remember the impossible first like this. Through spiritual memorials. How are you to remember the impossible in your life? How are you to remember God's work in your life? If God's going to answer that prayer that you prayed last week for impossible things, the prayer that you're going to begin praying because you're with us today for him to do the impossible, how are you going to remember? How are you not going to forget? Well, first, you need to build spiritual memorials in your life. There's two memorials that happen here in the text I think are fascinating. The first, it's a national memorial. That's the one that we just read about, where there's 12 stones for 12 men signaling the 12 tribes of Israel. That each son of Jacob, the people of Israel, they each had a stone representing their family, their line, their tribe. And each man would go and he would take his stone and he would place it in the middle of the river. And if you noticed, it said upon his shoulder. Think about how big a boulder it has to be for some of these men. I'm sure they didn't pick small men to lug a boulder, a stone on their shoulder. It's not a little rock. It's a stone the size of this. And each man had to grab the stone and put it on his shoulder and walk it back into the river. About 50 yards back into the middle of the river. He's lugging a stone, putting in the work to remember what God did. They just watched a river part. A river stopped flowing. And their ability to remember, God knows, is so small that he commands them to build a memorial. You might think you have a really great memory. Maybe you're the kind of person in your friend group who's great at trivia or quick recall on facts, details. You will forget God's work in your life if you don't build memorials to him. You need to remember the impossible things that God has done. Your heart will be faster to forget it than you can even imagine. You would think the Israelites wouldn't need a memorial to remember a river stopping. But they did. And so do you. It's not just a national memorial, it's a personal memorial. Jump down with me to verse 9. Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. So you have the 12 men of Israel setting up a national memorial, and Joshua is doing something personal for himself. Not only is the national memorial going to be a thing, he wants a personal memorial of what God is doing through his leadership. So what does Joshua do? Joshua does this by himself. That means he takes over and grabs a stone, maybe two if he's in bulking season, and he's walking 50 yards, placing them in the river. Joshua had to do that at least 6 times, maybe 12. All so that he would remember the impossible thing that God has done. I think of myself doing yard work back in the Midwest, carrying fertilizer and mulch in those bags on my shoulder in the hot, humid summer of Illinois. And I say that out loud right now, and I recognize I'm in Arizona, where hot summers are definitely more difficult here to bear. My point is Joshua made a moment, more than just a moment, he made it a memory for himself of what God has done. He did not want to forget God's work, not just through him, but in him. He took a moment to set up a personal, spiritual memorial. And I think there's a difference between generic memorials and spiritual memorials in our society. Generic memorials, this is what you'll see at a museum, right? They recall just history. General events that happen across, and you learn the history, and they're fascinating. You can learn all about parts of our country's founding and growth. Maybe if we go to the Hockey Hall of Fame in a few years, you'd find out that we won the gold medal today, and you'd get to recall that, and that's a fun historical event. But the difference is between a generic memorial and a spiritual memorial is this: a spiritual memorial helps you rehearse God's faithfulness. It's one thing for me to pull up a picture of my wife and remember a general history of our dating life. It's another thing altogether for me to look at that picture and go, wow, God has been faithful to me. He has given me a woman who loves him above all else, who loves his word, who loves our kids, who loves the church. That's a different way to look at that. It's a different way to interpret the impossible. It's how God can speak to you in even just the most ordinary of moments in your life. That you can have a spiritual memento, a memorial of what God has done. Look down to verse 20 and 22. These 12 stones, which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal, and he said to the people of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in times to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know Israel passed over this Jordan on dry ground. Just like their forefathers had left captivity of the Egyptian people and walked through the Red Sea on dry ground, this generation of Israelites got to put their feet where no foot had gone before, in the middle of the Jordan River. Israel passed over on dry ground. The detail of that is staggering to me. God could have left like an inch of water, right? And they could have passed through. But our God is so strong, so mighty, that when he does the impossible, he leaves no detail unchecked. He wants everyone to know him who did it. And we need to remember the act of God, the work of God in our life. We have to remember our impossible rescue was entirely his work. It was not our doing, it was his. And what a joy it is to experience the glory and wonder of knowing God and what he can do in our lives, that he can do the impossible and still does. And I think you have spiritual memories, you have moments in your life where you've seen God do work, where you've seen him move, where you've seen him change, where you've seen him do things in your life that you're like, oh my gosh, how is this possible? So I want to ask you this. What spiritual memorial have you set up to remember God's work in your life? Do you have any? A journal, a photo album? Maybe my pastor growing up, he had literal rocks in his office where he would write in Sharpie, hey, this is what God has done, because he wouldn't want to forget. It's shocking how quick you'd be to forget what God can do. But having those as a keepsake where you can come back to again and again to remind you of God's faithfulness, oh, what a needed point of walking with Jesus. We all need it. So have one for your life, for your family, even this church. We're going to have some. Right now we're at Mosley Middle School, and I guarantee you one day we're going to have some level of memorial stone as a part of our moment here at this school. Maybe it's a t-shirt. I don't know if it'll be a t-shirt or not. I don't know what it's going to be. But I know that one day in the life of our church, we're going to remember these days. We're not going to despise the day of small beginnings. We're going to rejoice in the moment and the work that God has done here. We're going to memorialize God's work among us at Mosley Middle School, because he is working and he is moving. It's a way you can visit and recall his work and his wonders, a way that you can just simply say to God, thank you. Just say thank you. What a great way to worship God this week is to go back in your photo album and go, man, God was in that. God was working through that. It's a great way to remember the impossible. It's through spiritual memorials. The second thing I want to talk to you about today is this, that the rescued remember the impossible by telling supernatural stories. Telling supernatural stories. Let's go back to verse 6 and 7. Joshua is saying to the people, hey, we're going to pass over, and that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? You got to have an answer. You got to have an answer for what the memorial is there for. You got to be able to tell your kids about it, your friends about it. You got to be able to tell a supernatural story. This is how memorials live on in the world. It can't just be a thing that you keep to yourself, but by telling supernatural stories, you're helping people see that it was God's work entirely. You're helping them see God in the midst of it. For God's people to remember God's work, they must not keep it to themselves. Because God's stories are always meant to be shared. We have to tell supernatural stories. Every friend group's got the storyteller in it. Every family's got the storyteller in it. And those are great people to have in your circle, by the way. If your friend group doesn't have one, you should just, go find yourself a storyteller. And maybe that's your interview for the friend application, like, hey, or what. And in my family, the storyteller is my brother Cole. Cole loves to tell stories. He's very funny. If he's listening to this at any point, you're not that funny. Brother moment. But what Cole will do is he gets so passionate, so excited, and when Cole's telling a story, everybody's pulled in, everybody's engaged, and he's telling stories of maybe even the most stupid thing, like how he afforded his lifestyle in college. It could be literally nothing. But what I found about great storytellers is that when they pull you in, the best story wins. And here's what I mean by that. In our world today, people are telling stories of all kinds in our country and our culture. They're telling narratives of how to live and who you should live for. And if you're raising Christian children, if your goal is to have a family, you need to know this, that the best story will win. If you are living a lifestyle that doesn't depict the reality that God is real, that he does the impossible, that it takes faith, and guess what? That you can see a living God among you, they will reject the story of God. Better story. We must tell our children, what do these stones mean to you? You need to have rhythms in your family of sharing with them. Hey, here's what God did. Here's who he is. Here's how he moved. You have to be a supernatural storyteller. And I can already hear some of you go, but Brandon, I'm not that friend in the friend group. I'm not the storyteller. I don't like to talk. I like to listen. Praise God for you. But here's what you have. You have a book full of stories to tell. If you don't have a starting spot now in your life, may I just encourage you, you have story after 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 story of who God is. And you can share that with anyone in your life. God can use your voice. He is with your lips. He is with your mouth as you share. Would you step out in faith and have the courage to tell of the supernatural stories of what God has done? But then also start living a life of faith. A life that says, hey, what happened in the past week that God has done that I want to talk about? Where's God moving in my life this week that I can share, that I can brag about Him, that I can boast in Him about? Are you even interpreting your life through that grid? Like, are you seeing your life as, man, I just want to see God in the details of that conversation. I want to see Him in the details of promotion, that meeting, that lab partner in class. Am I looking at it and going, God, what are you doing in this? Because Jesus only did what He saw the Father doing. And if you can look at your life and go, God, I'm here, right now, by your sovereign plan. Why do you have me here, and what story are you trying to write? I think you'll see the living God among you. You'll see stones that mean something to you.